always thought alien life would come from the stars. But it came from deep beneath the Pacific.
What the hell is going on?
The first kaiju made land in San Francisco. The second attack hit Manila. And then the third one hit Cabo. And then we learned this was not going to stop. In order to fight monsters, we created monsters of our own. We needed a new weapon. The Jaeger program was born. Two pilots, our minds, our memories, connected. And man and machine become one.
All right.
Hey,
We're live.
we're back.
The script, BSE, Pacific Rim.
Yes.
Chris Durham, David Negron. Chris, how you feeling?
Oh, pretty good, man. Pretty good. It's been a hectic couple of weeks. We haven't done one of these in a few weeks, so I'm hoping I haven't forgot how to do it.
Yeah, I'm glad we're back. Pacific Rim, I caught it a couple weeks ago. It was so much fun. I just knew we had to do the BSE,
Yeah, man. It's it's good. It's it's definitely it's got all the summer blockbuster mojo.
So many great things about it. A lot of positive reviews. I'm a fan of Guillermo Del Toro.
Yeah, the worst reviews that I see about it are people like refuting that it's good. They're articles like why Pacific Rim isn't actually good. It's like no,
Right,
it was
right.
good. It's a fun movie, man. It was
a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Let me just do some intros for the script BSE. Okay. The BSE is a companion to the Script Main podcast where we're going to use Blake Snyder's beat sheet to break down the movie as we review it and go through what we liked, didn't like, about all the craft of the writing, the screenwriting that goes into a film through the lens of this beat sheet. Okay, our beat sheet, the final beat sheet that Chris and I put together for this is going to be available online. There's going to be a link to it. We are now talking. I wanted to ask anyone out there listening. We need some iTunes reviews. We've got a couple good reviews up there. If you like the podcast, if you like the script or the script BSE, please go to iTunes and fill out a review. Give us 4 stars. Give us 5 stars. Tell us what you like about it. Also, tell us what you don't like. There's one or two up there that have some criticism. We're going to talk about those guys next week. If you post a review, we're going to talk about you.
Yeah.
So with that, also up on the website is an explanation of the Blake Snyder beat sheet of what all the beats mean. And you can get that. There'll be a link to that at the podcast site as well.
Absolutely.
With that, we're jumping in. The film is Pacific Rim. The filmmaker is Guillermo Del Toro, right?
Yep.
Of Hellboy fame, of Pan's Labyrinth.
Pan's Labyrinth was golden.
Fame. What a great film. He's one of the Mexican trio. Him and Cuarón and Iñárritu came out about 5-6 years ago, kicking ass from Mexico.
Yeah, he's a mastercraft filmmaker, man. Like he's got his guys. He's got Guillermo Navarro as his always DP.
Yeah,
these guys craft a movie together. You can tell a Del Toro movie by the way it looks.
Yeah,
Del
Del Toro is famous for saying if there isn't a monster on his call sheet, he's not coming to set.
Yeah, wasn't he originally attached to do The Hobbit? I remember really looking forward to that.
He was doing The Hobbit. this is his first film that came out in 5 years because he was attached to this other film. What was it called? Was it The Minds of Something? There's this big, epic movie that he got drawn into that didn't come about. So Pacific Rim he finally picked up, but this is right up his alley.
Oh yeah,
this is right up his alley. And I don't know. I want to jump into the beat sheet for Pacific Rim. Where are we? Okay, opening image. The opening image for this, it's pretty straightforward. We start out underwater. We start out in space and underwater.
Yeah, it's underwater, but it looks like space.
But it looks like space, right? Yeah. So because, and he's putting together the ideas of, is this a movie about space, science fiction in space? Is about inner space versus outer space? And it matches up pretty interestingly with the closing image at the end.
Yeah.
Because there is some multidimensional aspects to it.
Right.
But a lot of this movie does take place in the water and fighting in the water and over the water. So
yeah, definitely.
This is not a movie about robots fighting aliens in the sky as much it is as fighting them on land and in the ocean.
Well, yeah, I mean the aliens or the kaiju, they come from the water, right? Like they come from deep under the sea, from another dimension and a crack, and that's part of the opening image too. Like, you have what looks like a star field that resolves to an under ocean image, and that it lands on this crack in the ocean floor that is a portal to another dimension, right?
Aliens not coming from space, but from underwater. It's a little
Cameron did it first.
Little James Cameron. I was about to say little James Cameron. It's a little bit from the nightmares that brought us The Abyss.
But these are two way separate movies, man.
Yeah, oh man, they definitely. So the setup, the theme stated, I had a little trouble remembering if anyone had a theme stated, except for the fact that there are badass lines written throughout this whole movie, most of them given to Marshall, and I'm going to put those throughout the podcast tonight. It's just, canceling the apocalypse is like my favorite. Tonight we're canceling the apocalypse.
Yeah, I don't know. Those didn't land well with me, man. Like, I don't know if it was his delivery of them or if it felt like it. You
got to be on board for this, man. This is where you sign up. This movie is one of those. It takes us back to those '80s like Go For It films. Okay, the soundtrack sounds like an '80s movie. The vehicles and the robots, they seem like G.I. Joe, Cobra, Robotech, and Voltron.
Don't get me wrong.
The badass one-liners, the music. They got Tom Morello on the guitar, but he brought back this '80s, feel. So I love the one-liners. So and maybe I'll figure out a theme stated and put it on the beat sheet a little later. But the setup of this movie is basically that there are these enormous monsters, Godzilla-like monsters, they called kaiju, slowly started to attack cities of Earth, out of nowhere. Yeah. And so in response, we decide to build these battle machines called Jaegers, to fight them hand to hand.
German for hunter. Right?
Hunter. Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Deciding to build robots is a very Japanese response to such an idea. Almost, it definitely goes back to the Godzilla stuff. But
this is every Godzilla movie and anime.
The Germans are also historically great technicians. So interesting. There's a very international feel to this film, right?
Oh, sure. It's brilliant in terms of marketing, Yeah.
Yeah. You've got your every Jaeger has to be piloted by two guys. What was that about?
So they explain it away by it's just too much for one guy, right? Like it takes the right hemisphere of the brain from the guy on the right and the left hemisphere of the brain from the guy on the left. No one person could really do it, so they've got
a Jaeger. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, they got to drift. They got to do a neural handshake to be able to do it. Yeah, it's cool, man. It's a cool idea.
It's a cool way to put two people, to pair people up in a film. You need a Maverick and Goose situation.
Exactly.
Okay? If you had one pilot, you could very easily have the Jaegers piloted by one guy and two Jaegers, but you character-wise, you got to put two people in this. The relationship between the two, the main character and the dynamic character that we meet, Mako, later, it's very important to the story. If you're going to have any story in between this movie about robots kicking monsters' asses. So
yeah, and you're constantly going back and forth. You're constantly going into the cockpit and showing these two people and showing what's going on,
The neural drift mechanism, it's a teamwork thing, brings a teamwork theme. There's a lot of great themes. I got to tell you, the family themes in this movie are so heavy. They're everyone's brothers, everyone's brother and sister, everyone's father and daughter, everyone's father and son.
Yep.
Very heavy, and so just like the family dynamic is there. Okay, so moving forward with the setup, there's a Russian pair of Jaeger pilots, a Japanese pair, a British pair, and our American pair.
Right.
Although our American actors don't, our actors don't do as great American accents, and I forget that they're American at certain points throughout this movie.
Right. Yeah. Charlie Hunnam does okay, but.
Yeah, our main character Raleigh and his brother are the Americans, and their Jaeger's named Gypsy Danger, and cool, which is awesome. Gypsy Danger is fantastic.
Yeah,
and it makes you think of motorcycles or something like that, or old airplanes, like the Memphis Belle.
Yeah, exactly. It's got that kind of vibe to it.
Yeah. But in the setup, early first act, in a battle with a kaiju, these brothers, who are some of the best pilots, they take some risks they don't need to, and Raleigh's brother ends up dead, torn out. Half of the duo is torn out, and this sets up. This is the old world for Raleigh, is that he quits being a Jaeger pilot after this experience. He loses his brother.
Right. Well, it's more than just losing his brother, though, right? Like, they talk about your mind and your memory merges when you're in a drift. So not only did he lose his brother, he felt what his brother was going through.
Yeah.
When it's worse than just seeing your brother die. You feel him die.
Yeah. So that's insane, but that sets up at the same time. They give us a little exposition that there's a second solution, a competing solution to the Jaeger program. To defeating the kaijus, a coastal wall solution. Basically, they're just going to build big ass walls around the major cities of Earth and let the kaijus pound on them. Like, who the hell ever thought that was going to work? Like, it's not.
Well, but they explain too. Like the problem is the escalation is already starting, right? Like, it started with one kaiju coming and bashing up San Francisco, and then they destroyed it, and then more came, but they're coming more and more frequently, right? So frequently that the Jaegers just can't keep up anymore.
I saw some. I just kept feeling like political implications of the wall. Every wall that's ever been put up in history of Earth has been a bad idea. You get the Berlin Wall. You get the wall America is trying to put up between Mexico and the United States. You get the wall that Israel is trying to erect. It's just a way of not dealing with the problem. It's a passive way of not dealing with the problem. And so the coastal wall project starts to fail after a couple years, and then the kaiju start to attack at greater frequency. And Marshall, played by Idris Elba, best performance of the whole movie for me, tries to recruit Raleigh again and bring him back to the Jaeger program because they're jump starting it and they've got a new plan, even though the kaijus are coming more frequently and they're bigger and badder.
Yeah, it's kind of his last ditch effort, right? Like, this is what we're going to do. we're going to try to seal it up. We've got a plan because, if we don't do this, all that's left is the wall.
Right. So, you said they're going to seal it up. What's the plan?
Yeah.
What would
the plan? So the plan is to.
The kaijus are coming out of a hole in the deep in the ocean.
They want to seal this up, although they say it's been tried before and failed. But again, they think it can be done. This is the last ditch effort. There's only four Jaegers left, right?
Yep.
And so Marshall seeks out Riley, Charlie Hunnam, and that's really your catalyst, right? That's your inciting.
That's our catalyst, yeah. And then debate Riley. Is it Riley or Riley?
I go with Riley. I don't know. It's one of those words. Some people say Raleigh.
I'll say Raleigh Durham. Raleigh Durham. Raleigh refuses at first. He doesn't want anyone else in his head. He knows he'd have to team up with someone again. He's not ready for that. Yeah. And this is our debate. And then
it's really short here.
Huh?
It's really short here.
Yeah, the refusal of the call is really, really short here.
It's really kind of half-hearted.
Marshall dropped a great one-liner. Look, man, the world is coming to an end. Wouldn't you rather die in a Jaeger?
Yeah, or you want to fall off a wall, right?
Yeah, exactly. You want to go and work on a coastal wall. Anyway, Raleigh decides to get with it. Breaks into two. He says, "All right, I'll come back after a couple of years, back to the Jaeger program." And they show up at the Shatterdome, which is like the headquarters of the new Jaeger program, which is pretty awesome. It looks a lot like every headquarters from Mattel that I bought as a kid. Every G.I. Joe headquarters, Cobra headquarters. It looks a lot like the Terradrome.
Right. Or like the Transformer that was a city.
Exactly. Metroplex. It looks a lot like Metroplex. And so this whole Del Toro grew up at the same time we did. He was playing with all those toys, or the Mexican versions of those toys, and he's just like making it real.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, and you got a warehouse that has these 4 Jaegers.
Yeah, and they're working on it. Okay, then we get our B story.
Yep.
Comes through, and I will argue the first thing we get is we meet Mori Mako, the sexy officer.
Mako, played by Renko Kikuchi, which I couldn't.
Who's she famous from? What is?
I can't stop thinking about while I was watching this, I just couldn't stop thinking about Brothers Bloom, because she's in that, and I listen to that every day when I'm writing. It's like one of my favorite soundtracks, and so I always think about that movie when I see her.
That was.
She's in the new Wolverine movie too.
Yes. Was she in Inarritu's film? Was she the Japanese girl in Inarritu's film? She was. It was in Babel, right? Wasn't she in Babel?
Was she?
I may be jumping. Yeah, she was the Japanese girl, teenage girl in Babel.
Okay.
Film. Probably how she get recommended to Del Toro, because I know they're buddied. So, she's fantastic. But to me, that's the C story. Okay, the real B story, the one that gets a lot of page count here, that's really more important, is the research team, the biologist and the math guy, right?
Yeah.
Who are working on the background on how to beat these kaijus from the inside out, trying to understand what goes on in the brains of the kaijus, who's sending them. The math guy is figuring out, their frequency and when they may appear.
When there will be more than one, that's on the horizon now.
This is great, because this B story functions just the way you want in a screenplay, because it takes you out of the A story. The A story is very much Raleigh and Marshall training to become better pilots of these Jaegers, and this is a completely other type of story. It's almost a detective story. A scientist trying to figure something out. Then he goes down to Chinatown, basically, try to buy some kaiju like organic parts, and there's a whole thing we'll get into. It's a B story's function in a screenplay is to relieve us from the A story,
but to also mirror it and intersect with it at crucial points, right?
Intersect at crucial points. And yes, to mirror it. This is, the scientist and the math guy are the opposite of the military guys, right?
Right.
So it's the.
But they still have that rivalry. They just like Riley and Mako are, they're in it together, and that they're going to come together at the end. They're not, kind of quite copacetic just yet.
Yeah, what's great is the math guy and the science guy hate each other in the beginning.
Yeah, this reminded me a lot of Independence Day, right? Like because you've got something similar going on with the Jeff Goldblum thing.
Absolutely,
right? Yeah,
absolutely. The math guy drops another great one-liner. I don't know if this is Del Toro's writing. It might be Travis Beacham, because Travis Beacham has a story credit on this, but he's dropping these great one-liners. The math guy's like, arguing with the science guy about numbers. He says, numbers are the closest thing we get to the handwriting of God. It's awesome.
That's great, yeah.
I love it.
It's great. Yeah, it's very over the top, but also very cool.
These one-liners is like a dash of, rhetoric in the middle of like a big-ass action movie. I love it. That's how action movies should be. Very few words, but when you drop the lines, it should be, be fantastic. Yeah. Strength and honor,
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like what's his name, Charlie Day's performance here.
Charlie Day is great in this.
Yeah,
he's great in this. He plays the biologist or the Kaiju.
Yeah. Yeah, is he a biologist? He's like a kaiju groupie kind of.
Xenobiologist, right. Yeah,
xenobiologist, right? And he's all about the kaiju.
Okay, fun games. Marshall has his plan to against the new kaijus. He wants to nuke the opening, right? Yep. The scientist and the mathematician kind of disagree. They don't think it's going to work because it's been tried before. But then the fun and games is the training montage.
Right.
You will.
Okay. Oh man, I wanted a Rocky style training montage.
Throwback, the training montage of, and why would training to be a kaiju pilot? Why would martial arts sparring be appropriate? Because it is.
Because
it's an 80s throwback movie, okay?
Yeah, because it's a dance, right? Like they've got to be able to be one mind and connect and do that dance and
Sure.
No, but that's a fun scene, man. When they're there on the mat and they're fighting with the sticks.
Set piece and the fun and games, absolutely. That's what we want. And we get Mako, who's supposed to be advising on who's the best partner. We get Raleigh taking out everybody. He can't find anybody who's nearly as good as him. Can't find anybody who he wants to drift with. And then Mako finally steps in the ring against Marshall's his desire. There's something secret about her that he does not want her to be the pilot. The pilot with Raleigh. Something he knows about her past that he thinks would make her a liability.
Right, and then there's also some of that fatherly protectiveness. Again,
that's a secret. Don't pay it off. It's later we find that out. We'll pay that off later. There's a secret. Yeah.
Right.
So one of the things I love about Mako is that she's a true believer. They do mention that something happened with her family, and that one of the reasons she wants to kick kaiju ass is to revenge her family.
Yeah.
I love that. Really,
it's a classic theme.
Her character life. Yeah, Raleigh was kicking kaiju ass before he lost his brother. That's just what he does. And now he was off. He didn't have any other place to go. He's got no other place to go. So he comes back to the Jaeger program. But Mako's been trying to get into a Jaeger her whole life to kick some ass, to get some revenge.
Sure.
And you just feel, with her Japanese background, you just feel the history of every Godzilla, attacks movie that did a number on Tokyo. She's trying to avenge all those deaths. Let's see. So we got the training the candidates montage, and it reminded me a lot of the Karate Kid, the karate, the training montage. These are setting up. They're doing points, 3 points here, 2 points there.
Right.
Back to you're the best of the 1980 soundtrack.
You're the best around. Yeah, I love that movie.
Best in my monster movie. So it's like, and then there's another great line where Raleigh tells Mako, I want you to be my partner, but Marshall doesn't, and she says that that it can't happen. If he says it, that's the way it goes, right? And he says, well, why are you so obedient to her? And she says, it's not obedience, it's respect.
Yeah.
Booyah! More like these awesome one-liners. I love it,
It's a little culture clash.
Life echoes in eternity. I love it. Okay, so back to the B story a little bit. Our scientist does a kaiju human drift experiment. Newton, the guy's name is Newton in the movie, and he discovers that. What does he discover? You remember? There's some master alien colonist scenario.
Right. So he kind of sees. So they get a portion of the brain, right? And he does a drift with it, and he can kind of see its memories. And then that is
like a kaiju brain uses their drift technology.
Right. And then he sees on the other side what they're doing, and he knows what they're doing. He says they're not just like these wild monsters that are kind of coming through. They're just kind of coming through. Those were like advanced scouts. The ones on the other side are really fucking crazy, and they're planning to come here and take it over.
To colonize.
Yes.
And that's sort of the aliens colonizing through space and time. He doesn't even mention that the dinosaurs were the first try.
Yeah. He said the dinosaurs were the first.
The dinosaurs were the first try, but the colonization got interrupted by the meteor.
Something like that. Yeah. That actually struck me as really silly.
Yeah, a little silly, but a little dinosaur. I mean, it gives some kind of genetic. Why do these things look like dinosaurs? I mean, let's talk about that, Chris.
Okay.
What do these monsters look like? What do you feel? How do you feel about these?
I feel like he tried. I mean, he obviously tried to make them somewhat reptilian, right? But also kind of tried to go out and I've listened to interviews or read interviews talking about how he tried. Del Toro tried really hard to make the monster design so that it, although they were logical-looking creatures, they weren't really, exactly reminiscent of anything on Earth, right? So you got like the knife head, right? That has the long nose. That's a knife, and
the first monster looked like I don't know if you've seen. You see Conan the Destroyer?
Oh my God!
Remember when they turn the prince into it goes wrong because the sacrifice goes wrong and he turns into like kind of a knife head monster?
Yeah, and Conan's got to pull the horn off it.
Yeah, and Conan's got to pull his horn off. Well, I was thinking Conan is going to jump out of the Jaeger and help Raleigh out and pull the horn off, and then take some hose in the castle like he always does. But to me, the monster, the creature creation in this movie, he had this reptilian thing going on. I thought what he didn't want to do was fall into basically the Power Rangers problem, which is basically a monster of the week who is very distinct. Like, here is the monster that looks like a tiger and a chicken put together. Here's a monster that falls into that looks like an eagle and a bear, put together. Because that's what happened. That's what Power Rangers was. It's like a monster of the week, and they each had a special power, right? That was very well delineated, like a lightning beam or lasers from the eyes or bear claws or something like that. If he delineated it any further, I felt like it would step into this like Power Rangers, like Saturday morning cartoon stuff. So the aliens are a little bit these monsters are, they are creatures. They're different creatures. They have different abilities, but he doesn't dote on it too much because I think is fine. Is fine.
Yeah, don't they? Do they talk about someplace? And it's been a couple weeks since I saw, but I seem to remember them talking about like they all kind of start off the same, and then as they grow, they're molded genetically or something like that.
That was a big hole in the movie for me. What one of the guys discovered that the chromosomes are the same and that they're clones.
Yeah.
And if they were clones, how do they end up different? Like, I don't get that. Like, that didn't work for me at all. So the masters back in the other dimension are cloning these guys. And where does that play in? I don't understand where that plays in. If there is this doesn't play into the movie. I mean, I have some trouble with the third act of this movie I want to talk about later. But
Sure.
if you're going to use this idea of they're cloning, all you have to do is the goal of the third act is to kill the original, and then you can't clone them anymore.
Right.
And that's not what we have here.
Yeah. So that's maybe a little bit of what we call the multi-mumbo jumbo, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You're trying to explain too much. Like you're explaining that where these come from and that they're clones, but that doesn't really matter.
Look, man, Newton's doing all sorts of experiments on them. He didn't need to decide that they were genetically alike or brothers or whatever. He just needed to figure out the brain. Oh, while we're talking about monsters, I wanted to bring up Starship Troopers, okay?
Okay.
Remind me a lot of those insects, right?
Yeah, the bugs.
Reminiscent of the bugs from Starship Troopers, which were very much more like Power Rangers delineated. You've got the soldier insect, right? And then you have the brain, the queen insect, right?
Yeah.
And then you had like these slugs that were more like these artillery, like heavy artillery cavalry insects. Very well defined, and it makes it a little more cartoonish when you say that these insects were created for a very special purpose. It makes it feel very much like Mattel is coming out with a toy line that has to be well understood by 8-year-olds.
Yeah.
But
again, we forgive it here, right? Because at the end of the day, you can't get more high concept than sea monsters versus robots.
That's right, and that's like I said, Del Toro doesn't go down that path. He tries to make it a little bit more ambiguous. These monsters are a little bit scarier, a little different every time, a little different powers every time. All right, moving forward, we're in the fun and games. We've got the training montage. I didn't mention one note I made was. We finally find out what happens to Mako in her childhood, right? Do you remember?
Yeah. Okay. So when they finally when Mako and Raleigh finally step into a Jaeger together and they do the neural handshake.
Yeah.
She kind of freaks out, right? Because he's got access to her memories, and so she's going back in time to when she was a little girl and her family was killed in a kaiju attack.
Yes.
And she was kind of running from the monster, right? So we see all that here. I think it's later on that we see the end piece of that, right?
And this is very telling for me. Not very much later on. We see the beginnings of that story. And then only a couple of scenes later, we see it in full effect again.
Yeah.
Guillermo Del Toro shows Mako's childhood memory twice, okay? And to me, this is telling of the filmmaker. This is the most telling scene of the filmmaker in the whole movie, that he shows this twice. I think Del Toro connects to this child, the monsters and nightmares, from his childhood. A lot of his creative juices come from his nightmares of when he was a child.
And that plays out in Pan's Labyrinth as well.
Plays out in Pan's Labyrinth, absolutely. And I think when you see again, when he shows this Mako's childhood dealing with a monster attacking our city, taking her family, and then being saved by a knight in shining armor, a Jaeger shows up and saves only her. And who's the pilot?
Marshall.
Back when Jaegers were only piloted by one guy, right?
Yeah.
And she saves him, and then it's revealed that it's not just that Marshall thinks she would be a liability as a pilot because she wants revenge, but he thinks of her as a daughter. He doesn't want her in danger.
Yeah.
But I thought it was very telling that Del Toro spent so much time, in a movie that's, full of like action stuff. He spent a lot of time on these images of the childhood being frightened, very scary images, crying images, running through the street. I think that, speaks to some of the super genres.
Yeah, it's definitely a kid's nightmare.
Super genre of Del Toro, the thing he's always talking about.
The auteurness of Del Toro.
And then Raleigh gets into an argument with Marshall about letting Mako after she flips out a little about letting her pilot again, and puts his hand on Marshall, and Marshall says two things. One, don't you ever touch me again.
Two,
don't you ever touch me again. Badass. Idris Elba is the biggest badass in this movie. I love it. This is such a great fantasy world. One note was like, I felt really transported watching this movie. I felt really, and unlike, the Terradrome, the Superdome, whatever they're in their headquarters, feels a lot like the headquarters in The Matrix. It's underground, it's metal.
Yeah.
It feels like they're running around a first-person shooter a lot, But the sense of this movie is an optimistic one. The Matrix, when they're underground, it's a very nihilistic movie. All the philosophies around are very nihilistic about, the weaknesses of man and robots, we deserve to die kind of stuff. This is about, no, we are striving against all odds to, using everything we have to fight, and we're going to win. It's very optimistic. And,
Yeah. And it's, it's important. The heroes in it are really driving that optimism, right? Because you can kind of see that the world around them, they've kind of gone to building walls, right? And there's scenes where Marshall is having to talk to these politicians, right, who are not so, forward about it. They're just kind of throwing their hands up in the air, and all we can do is build walls. And Marshall is still out there saying, you know what, we can do something about this, and he's putting together his team. And
this is where I got to start to talk about one of the flaws, the structure, story flaws in this movie, which is Marshall, at a certain point, starts taking over the movie. Our protagonist, Raleigh, I wrote down the note. I said, this movie needs a star.
Yeah, I agree.
The actor who plays Raleigh is not a big enough star to hold down this movie. They should have put somebody bigger in. You know why? Because in an action movie, in a blockbuster, you should put a star in. Okay?
Yeah.
You know what? That's part of the genre convention. Okay? And this guy, we don't know. He's not carrying it enough. And then they make the story mistake. Marshall starts taking over a lot of the duties of a protagonist in a story. Okay?
Yeah.
He starts taking over his connection with Mako, the training, eventually getting the Jaegers together and the training going becomes more of a big deal. We'll get to more. I just want to.
There's definitely that protagonist problem. It actually, we keep talking about movies that this reminds us of in certain ways. This reminds me a little bit of Armageddon, right?
Yeah.
Because is it Affleck or is it Willis, right?
Right, but that's well balanced because
it's well balanced.
Is the A story, Willis is the mentor, okay, and in the third act, Affleck has his own A story while Willis has his own A story, and then they come together.
And maybe
we lose Raleigh for quite a while in the second half of the second act. Let's get to that. Our midpoint here is the kaiju start attacking Earth again. Okay.
So this is weird, and I kind of wonder exactly where to place the midpoint here, right?
Okay.
I kind of tend to think that it goes with. So I don't think that it's necessarily when Charlie Day does the mind meld with the alien, but I think at a certain point when he's talking to Hannibal Chow, which is an awesome name, that he realizes what he's done, and that sets the ticking time clock, right? Because now he's mind melded with them, and because they have a hive intelligence, they know what's going on. So
what you're suggesting? Okay, this is good. Basic story structure where the B story. Newton goes to the Hong Kong underworld, finds an apothecary shop. Reminds me a lot of Big Trouble in Little China. Right?
Absolutely.
We get a nice cameo from Hellboy himself, Ron Perlman, as Hannibal Chow, as the kaiju black market guy who has kaiju and everything. And he gets a brain from him, or a second brain from him, so that he can do a full-on mind meld with the thing. And what you're suggesting, and I didn't get this, what you're suggesting is that when he fully mind melds with the brain, it tells the masters back in the other dimension what their plan is. Yeah,
well, that's what he says. So Hannibal Chow says to him at one point, he says, he as soon as he realizes what's happened, he starts closing down shop and throws Charlie Day out, right? He's like, no. And at one point he says to him, he says, okay, so you drifted with the kaiju. And he says, yeah. He says, and you know that the kaiju have a hive mind. And that's when he realizes that, you just told, every other kaiju on the other side what's going on. And that kind of steps it up. And it's not too long after there that the first double kaiju battle comes, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But also the math guy predicted that one. He said that was...
Sure, but it's an escalation, that happens that happens not too long after the midpoint. So that's one thing. It's when we get a bit more of a, the stakes are raised. We've got a bit of a timetable now. The bad guys can close in because now they're kind of more privy to the good guys' plan.
Yeah, that works really well. I didn't pick it up the first time around, but of course now there's a ticking time clock. We're moving forward. We get into our second of we're at the midpoint, and it's only our second kaiju Jaeger set piece, which is great because when your movie is about monsters battling robots, you can only do it so many times and make it interesting and surprising and so whatnot. Right.
You can't do Superman and have a 40-minute long fight, right? You got to pepper it.
Saw what happened at the end of Man of Steel.
Well, that's what I'm saying, right? You've got to pepper it throughout the movie, right?
Right. So we've got our midpoint is our second Jaeger kaiju set piece. It's very Top Gun here, okay? Yeah. Because Maverick and Ice are grounded. Mako and Raleigh are not allowed to go out. They send in the Russians and the Chinese, right? The Chinese have this dope-ass Jaeger with 4 arms and knives.
Let's not forget, too, there's also the rivalry with, the Australians, right?
I think they're Brits.
Yeah, maybe. But it breaks out into a fight, and this is bad guys close in stuff. This isn't really the bad guys, but this is antagonistic forces of rivalry within the ranks, right?
Right. The American versus the British. Who's going to be the real leader of this game?
Right. Maverick versus Iceman, right?
So Iceman versus Maverick, very much. So in our second set piece, the Russians and the Chinese fight this one kaiju. China employs the thundercloud. The Russians just pound the hell out of this thing, but the Chinese are destroyed. Their Jaeger is called Typhoon, which is awesome. And the Russians are, because the kaiju out of nowhere decide to double team them, right? We get 2 kaiju for the first time, right? Yeah. And so this is a great way to raise the stakes. The first time we saw this, the rules of kaiju Jaeger fighting is 1-on-1. No, second time we do it, all of a sudden the rules have changed, right? Yep. So you surprised us. You've got to be able to do that.
It's a street fight.
Surprise us in these fights, because because otherwise this movie's going to get very boring, predictable, very well. Also, the kaiju in the second set, kaiju Jaeger set piece. All of a sudden, this kaiju has an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse that can mess with robots. They're evolving. Okay, bad guys are definitely closing in. And one of the reasons Gypsy Danger's sent in is because technically it's not fully electronic powered. It's
nuclear powered.
It's analog.
Yeah,
I don't know that it would have no electronic power at all. I don't know that it would be fully mechanical.
No, you know what though? Like it actually reminds me of when back in the day when I was in the Air Force. We used to talk about like hardening. You'd have to harden airplanes so they would resist in a nuclear war. But you would hear stories about guys who.
How do you do that?
Like lead and stuff like this.
Is it top secret? Will you have to kill me if you tell me?
I never had to do it. You just knew that they had done it for certain planes. But like we would talk to guys who'd gone over to Russia, and the Russians were just still using tubes. They didn't have solid state tech in their airplanes. I mean, like the MiGs and stuff did, of course, but like their cargo planes and stuff like that, they were still using tubes. So like if there was an EMP from a nuclear blast, like the plane would keep flying, and that's kind of what it reminded me of, like old school tech.
Right. Where we spent $1 million on a space pen, the Russians used a pencil.
Right. Just apocryphal, but whatever.
Gypsy Danger saves the day. He saves the Russians and the Chinese are destroyed. The British guy is disabled. Gypsy Danger saves the day.
Yes.
Kills both of the kaijus. And
earns the grudging respect of the Brit, the younger Brit.
Yeah, and then Riley gets a badass line. The kaiju sitting there. All dead on the ground. He says, "I think this guy's dead, but let's check for a pulse." Boom!
Yeah.
Takes him out, and just like blows him to bits. Just like cuts these, just keeps shoots him to bits. Beautiful. So it's a victory, but it's a 3-on-2. Okay. Quickly update us on the B story. We are updated on to the C story is Mako and Raleigh. They're growing closer. They're like working as a team because they're successful. Gypsy Danger saves the day. We come up with a D story here. We discover Marshall has an illness.
Yes.
Talking about Cold War and radiation. What do we find out?
Right, the soldier sickness, right? Like going back to Vietnam, right? Like the DDT and all that, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but no, like he's apparently, what is it? It's
because he was
radiation poisoning from piloting those old Jaegers, right?
Because they did it before they had the neural drift. It was too much for one person to do it. Right?
Yeah, that's right. That's what it was.
And so he was a Jaeger pilot. And he had dozens of missions, and so basically, he's got some kind of something where he's dying, he's getting bloody noses, whatnot. He's the father of this movie, and we find, we get to feel, his time is limited. Let's see. The Kaiju Brain Expedition, right? Okay, so. Basically, we've got two big set pieces of kaijus versus Jaegers, and we find out that it's now time to execute the plan. Like we're getting very close to the low point. I guess the low point is essentially when we lose the Japanese and the Russians.
One of my notes from seeing this, and I remember is thinking, there's not really what I would consider a true low point here, and I don't think it suffers for it. I just like there's not that like all is lost,
The father-son duo. We find out the father-son duo in the British Jaeger. The father has been disappointed because the son is kind of a cocky bastard the whole time, and they sort of make amends a little, and the father's injured from the fight, and he won't be able to drift and fight in the final fight with his son, which is great because it gives Marshall the chance to step in. We get the old the old
Right.
we get the old Jaeger pilot back, and because we want Idris Elba in this movie, we want him in the finale.
Yeah, you want him, definitely.
And this is where he fully takes over, by the way, because at the Dark Night of the Soul, Marshall gives the great Henry V speech, right? Today we are canceling the apocalypse. He's giving it, not Raleigh, not our protagonist, not Maximus, not William Wallace, but the mentor.
But that's okay. Again, you go back to Independence Day. It's the president who gives the speech, right? It's not Will Smith.
Oh, okay. But that's a good analogy.
So the thing is like, and you mentioned it before, that a bit of protagonist. I wouldn't say real protagonist ambiguity, but there are a lot of protagonist elements that are taken on by Marshall. And I think I think you also mentioned mentorship, and I think what would have made it work better for me is if Marshall had been more of a mentor to Raleigh, rather than just like a boss and get your hand off me.
Right, because you know what? Because we have Marshall and Mako,
right,
father-daughter. Okay, and what we have is the British father-son relationship. Okay.
Yeah.
And what we have between Mako and Raleigh can only be categorized as a brother-sister relationship. Okay?
Right.
There is some sexual chemistry in the very beginning, but no. This whole film has a family feel to it.
Yeah.
Okay? And that is why, and Del Toro had this in mind, because Mako and Raleigh never do it. They never kiss. In the end, even when they're victorious, like, it's just a hug and like, we did it. It's like a family scenario. This whole, all the Jaeger pilots, it's a big extended family.
Yeah.
Break into 3, time to go execute Marshall's plan. We're going to take the final 2 Jaegers.
Yep.
To the opening in the ocean, and we're going to nuke it and hopefully close it up. And for me, I'm like, it's a sunny day and they're flying above the ocean. I'm like, finally, we're going to get to see some of this imagery in the light of day.
Because it's raining every other time.
Because every other fight has been in the rain, in the water, in the dark, whatever. And it's beautiful. We get to see these beautiful robots, flying in the sun, some great special effects. And then they dive underwater.
Dump them in the sea.
And it's the abyss again, and it's dark, and it's hard to see. And, all right, and we get a
good third plot twist. Or third act twist.
Hold on. The B story crosses because Newton and the mathematician, what do they discover? What's the new information that they discover?
So they get the brain from Hannibal Chow, right?
Yeah.
Is it there's a kaiju that gets killed. One of the kaiju that got killed in the earlier fight, they go in to get its brain. So they've got Hannibal Chow and his scavengers.
It has a baby kaiju, which also doesn't work with the whole clone thing, but please continue.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. You're absolutely right. Okay, but so
and they decide to drift it together. They team up.
They do a two-man. That's right, because so now there's your love story between the two scientists, right?
Enemies become friends.
Yeah, so they drift with it and they figure something out. They figure out that the portal is one way, right? Like what is it? They have to actually go into it to destroy it.
The portal can sense if it's not organic matter or something.
Yeah.
Just throw a bomb in there. We're gonna have to go through it to get there, and to go through it, it won't just let a robot through. It's got to be a kaiju has to be involved. There's got to be some organic material there. So they enter with this new information. You always get new information after the low point, before the break into 3, and the plan. The 2 Jaegers get down into the water, and now it's 2 on 2 right?
Yep.
We think it's 2 kaiju versus 2 Jaegers, and Gypsy loses an arm, but he whips out a sword. Now he's got a sword. It's Voltron time, right?
Yeah.
And we've got 2-on-2. We've got the father and son theme again, but Marshall and the British kid end up getting their ass beat, and they've got to sacrifice themselves to give Becket, Raleigh Becket, the chance to, and Mako the chance to go through with the bomb and try to detonate.
Yeah.
This is where it gets, I'm a little let down by this third act. I mean, basically, it's very Armageddon right here. It's very. I mean, I love the fact that you're going to have Marshall sacrifice himself at the end of this movie. That's fine.
Sure.
He sacrifices his name, and he says to his daughter, he says, you can always find me in the breach,
Yeah.
And it's great. It's emotional. It's wonderful. That works. Except the whole scenario of basically all he has to do is slip through the time warp, and they figure out if he's holding on to a kaiju at a time, it'll fool the detectors, and he can get through to the parallel dimension, leave the bomb there, blow it up,
right,
and then possibly escape or not escape. This is not what I had in mind for a third act.
Yeah, it's
what I had in mind from the beginning, when you told me that there's another dimension, when you told me that there are aliens in another dimension, when you told me that they're cloning aliens in another dimension, okay, my third act is you've got to go to that dimension and you've got to fight there, okay? I wanted something out of Predator 2, where he gets through this wormhole to the other dimension, and there's like 5 kaiju standing there, right? And he's got to fight like 2 or 3 of them, kick their ass just in time to get the nuke set off. Like, I wanted fighting in this other world, this third universe, this other dimension. Let's find out more about these guys who are setting up the colonization. Let's spoil their colonization plans. Who knows? At the end of this movie, whether they just go and colonize another planet.
Because what we end up with is Independence Day again, right?
Yeah.
We've got Randy Quaid in the form of Marshall sacrificing himself, right? And then we've got Jeff Goldblum going into the spaceship. We get to see it. That's kind of cool. We get to see the other world, and they plant a bomb just like Jeff Goldblum planted a virus.
Well,
but you see it, and then
it's also Armageddon. It's like this little switch of who's going to stay behind and blow the thing up. But there's a whole world there. There's a whole thing. There's a whole taking this idea till its fullest extent, to the negation of the negation of where this third act needed to rise to.
It does not meet Sharknado standards.
It definitely does not meet Sharknado. It does not go all. It doesn't take the concept as far as Sharknado did.
Right, Sharknado did, man. They go into the tornado and they blow it up, and then sharks are coming out, and you go into the sharks, right? Like
that's how you take it to the full extent of a concept. Okay, you got to have. I wanted Becket one-armed, Becket and Mako going head-to-head with like a bunch of kaiju, some brand new cloned ones, and where's the cloning device, and what's the whole universe there, and maybe something honorable, something awesome, where like the kaiju are these warriors, this warrior class that are being used by sort of the brain, the intellectual elite class of these aliens in this other dimension. And that Becket coming through and slaying like 3 kaiju earns the respect of the other kaiju, and they tell the intellectual class, the elite class, you know what? we're not going to this planet anymore. These earn their respect.
We're on strike.
We're on strike. Let's go kick some other planet's ass. A little bit more like Predator 2. When he kicks the Predator's ass on the ship and they throw him a bone, they say, all right, here's your trophy. You've earned our respect. Because there's a big theme of respect here. And then you can let Becket and Mako go back through the wormhole without this ridiculous escape raft scenario that they use.
Yeah.
They end up jettisoning the escape rafts through the wormhole or whatever, and that's just
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't say I was disappointed with the third act, but it to me it's one of these things. It's neither really active nor passive, right? Like it's we're going to go there, we're going to drop the bomb, and we're going to get out. There's we have to fight to get there, and I guess that's what you go for. But I really like what you're saying. Go there and fight, and let's just go in and do it. But
I mean, yeah. So then, okay. So our movie ends with the bomb going off. They saved humanity. They closed the portal. Both Becket and Mako escape. We think Beckett's dead for a minute, but Mako sort of shakes them, and they end on this great moment on a raft in a sunny ocean, like brother and sister. It's not a love thing here. It's a family thing. They don't kiss. They don't embrace. It's just like maybe there's a hug or something. But I got a very family vibe from it, which is a really good choice because I'm sure Del Toro's getting notes from the studio. They got to make out. When's the sex? Blah, blah, blah.
Right. And, it's ambiguous. There's enough there that they could have a relationship after the movie's over, but that's not what it's about. It's a good note to end on.
Yeah, and, the other failure is, there's no real arc for Becket here. He never learns the lesson of, teamwork like Maverick did in Top Gun. You get a little bit of that from the British son and his father learning not to be a jerk. But there wasn't a real character arc for anybody in this movie. So Becket learning to trust again could have been an arc, but he learned to trust as soon as he made Mako his partner. Let's see.
We don't really get to see a real damaged Raleigh, that would have been interesting, right? If 5 years later after his brother died, he's just this damaged guy,
Yeah, exactly. And
recluse
and Marshall doesn't want him in the program. Mako is in the Jaeger because she's the best, but they're testing all kinds of other subjects, and Beckett's clearly great, but he's a loose cannon. And he breaks rules. He's Maverick. He's got to learn to stay with his wingman. That would be a better arc for this scenario. And you could still do the father-daughter thing. Then you get Marshall finally approving of Becket when he decides to play by the rules and stick with the plan. And Marshall, and that's the same arc as Affleck's character in Armageddon. He's got to learn. He's got to learn to Harry has to learn to trust him, and he's got to learn not to be a hot dog. That's the arc I was hoping for here. But I don't know. That does it. Is there anything else you want to do? Anything you want to say before we finish up?
No, man. I mean, look. I think I really enjoyed the movie. I think it was a good movie. It was, it's kind of the best of what high concept can be, right? Everybody throws around the term high concept, and the fewer words that you can use, the more high concept it is, right? So if it's sea monsters versus robots, that's about as high concept as you can get. And the movie has a decent amount of heart. It's trying to say a couple things. It's trying to play with a family vibe, with a sense of partnership, of openness, of teamwork, of working together between nations and stuff. There's a lot of cool stuff going on.
And the set pieces continue to surprise us, okay?
Yeah.
Something that can very easily become predictable. The style of this film, the visual style, and the the sound, the music, and everything is very original. Del Toro has this great '80s throwback stuff with his own spin on it, modern spin on it. You feel an original aesthetic to this movie that's very successful.
Yeah, no, you feel like you did when you were a kid and you were watching, not necessarily some of these like Japanese cartoons that I saw when I was a kid, like G-Force, or things that like when I was 5, I had no concept of like this Japanese sensibility, but these things were like amazing to me, Yeah,
it reminded me a lot of that stuff, a lot of those old great cartoons, a little bit of Thundercats. Thundercats was like a big family, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Voltron, like you talk about like having to have 2 people in the cockpit in the Jaeger, like Voltron had to be 5 people. These people had to work as a team to make, this ultimate weapon. That
I loved it when they
whipped
out the Voltron sword. That's not borrowing. That's homage. That's stealing outright. That's because it's a genre convention. Whip out the sword, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. And they got better. Like they figured out, the swords are a thing, right? Like that's cool.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, Chris. Thank you so much. Let me outro us. You can email us, fan mail us, hate mail us, comments, questions to scriptfeed@gmail.com. You can join our Facebook page. You can join our Google Plus page by searching for NYC Screenwriters Collective. You can follow us on Twitter @scriptfeed. If you live in New York City, you should sign up for one of our workshops. We review feature scripts. We review TV scripts. We do all kinds of stuff. Check out meetup.com under NYC Screenwriters Collective. And yes, we're looking for podcast reviews. Please go to iTunes. If you like the podcast, and give us a positive review. Write us some notes. We will read it next time on our podcast.
Yep, or just send us an email, like ask us a question, call us assholes.
Oh, yeah.
We'll talk about it.
Anything. We're gonna bring it. We're gonna bring it all out. Chris, thanks again.
Thanks a lot, David.
We'll see you soon.
Adios.
It's a new age of combat.
Human beings, genetically engineered to be the best fighters in history.
2 champions.
It isn't over until someone wins.
At war with each other.
Kill it! I have already killed you.
2 invincible men.
Let's finish it, Alexander, here now.
The ultimate killing machines.
I'm gonna get in this thing, and I'm gonna kick your...
Not for me.